2019 movie Living in Bondage, Breaking Free is a sequel to what is considered the first ever Nollywood movie. How does it qualify as the first Nollywood movie? That brings me to story time. Hello and welcome to Nollywood Fellow, a channel where I take you through Nollywood films. And today I'm going to be talking about Living in Bondage, Breaking Free. Now this video is dedicated to my friend Promise in Nigeria. He's probably one of the 5 people who watches my channel, who regularly watches my videos. Thanks a lot. He had requested that I review a couple of movies and series. Even though I may or may not go through all of them, I chose this one. And the reason I chose this one is because this movie has history to it. And it's a perfect example of the internet meme, how it started and how it's going. More on that coming up. So here I go, as promised to promise. Yeah, very radical pun, very original pun. I'm sure no one would have thought about it. Anyway, coming to the movie. So the 2019 movie Living in Bondage, Breaking Free is a sequel to what is considered the first ever Nollywood movie, Living in Bondage, which was made in 1992. It had a sequel that came 1 year later in 1993. Now, when I say first Nollywood movie, it wasn't the first Nigerian movie. That was probably made in the 60s on celluloid. This was made on tape. Now, this isn't even the first movie that was made on tape. Then how does it qualify as the first Nollywood movie? That brings me to story time. It's the early 90s in Nigeria and the country isn't in good shape. There's a military dictatorship and the economy is in tatters. Crime is on the rise, which causes theaters to shut down. And unemployment is on the rise as well. Talking of unemployment, that brings me to the first character in the story, Oke Okunjiofor. So he has recently undergone training at the National Television Academy and he's a pretty bright student, but because of the situation, he's unemployed and he wants to make a movie, but he doesn't have the ends. So he decides to be a hawker on the streets and collect funds so that he can go ahead and make his own movie on tape, you know, using the VHS cameras that were used for weddings and all of that. And that's when he gets introduced to the second character in the story, Kenneth Ennebu. Now, he was a businessman who was dealing in VHS tapes. VHS tapes, yeah. Only 90s kids will remember. Now, moving on to the third character, Chris Obi Rapu. He was a renowned director on Nigerian television. And the three of them came together and they created Living in Bondage. And once the movie was made, Kenneth Ennebu's experience and business acumen came in handy. He was dealing in VHS tapes. And at that point of time, the VHS tape market was mostly foreign movies. When I say foreign, I mean American, Indian, Chinese, all of that. Nigerian movies were there, but they were looked down upon. I mean, some shops which sold VHS tapes even had boards that said, no local films here. So that was the situation with Nigerian movies. But so once this movie was made, our man had the means, the distribution and the packaging to take this movie out there in a big way. And the result was that this movie flew off the shelves and it created a whole market for commercial Nigerian cinema. It got the ball rolling for what is today the world's second largest film industry after Bollywood. It makes like, say, 2,500 movies in a year. That's how big Nollywood is. Now, moving on from the story about the movie to the story of the movie, this movie follows the life of a man, Andy Okeke, who is dissatisfied with his life, especially from a financial standpoint. And through a series of events, he ends up joining this satanic cult where he has to sacrifice the person who he loves the most to enjoy the riches of life. The movie is basically a commentary on economic morality, if you could say so. Now, I won't be critiquing the old movie, especially through the lens of present day cinema because it won't be fair on the movie. This movie is a product of restrained budgets, improper equipment, and smart thinking and loads of passion. So I'll stick to the basics of it. But what I will say is that this movie reminds me of Indian serials way back in the 90s, not the present day ones. And especially in terms of the set, the acting, and the camera work. I'm sorry I have to break this video into two. Do click on this video to check out the second part.